Let's demystify autism today. Some of these terms can seem like a foreign language. Let's make it real. Thanks for joining today. I'm Rachel with Autistic Lately, and on this channel, we discuss all things neurodivergence. Today, we're going to dive into my autistic traits and see if you share any of these. We will break down each of these traits and more in subsequent videos to come. Before we get rolling, it should be said that I am not a doctor, a psychologist, or a psychiatrist. I am an autistic individual on a journey. These are my traits, and if you share them, I encourage you to do some more research. I'm not in a position to diagnose. So, being childlike, naive, and literal, I believe, are all related. I don't know about you guys. This is really interesting to me. I've always thought of myself as a girl. I don't know what it's like to feel like a grown up, I guess. I don't feel any older than I did. I mean, more experienced, maybe. I've been through a lot, and here I am in my late 40s, and I still feel so very childlike. I tend to prefer to have innocent type things around me, like media and things like that. I've never liked violence and like dirty jokes and I don't know, all these things that a lot of other people seem to enjoy. I can't really stand. I also, I love children's movies and children's books. I've always been that way, and I'm still that way to this day. I have favorite books from my childhood that I still reread. I have favorite movies from my childhood that I will still watch or actually pretty much just listen to because I don't sit still. Actually, making these videos has been good for me because it makes me sit still. And as far as like being naive and gullible, that's something that started when I was, you know, in the very beginning and has carried through to this day. I believe that that's why a lot of us are the targets of abuse and narcissistic people. I think that we are a target in that way because we're so trusting. And that's always been kind of a downfall for me. And I don't know that it's something I could ever actually change about myself. I don't know how I would ever go about doing that. I have discovered in my readings and listening to others that this is a common thread among autistic people. And I think being literal goes right along with that. I can be really sarcastic, but a lot of jokes will go straight over my head. And, I can't stand it when people are using like innuendos and all these other things. It's like, save it for somebody else. I mean, I'm really just not interested. And I just can't go there. My brain just doesn't work that way. So I think that all three of these things just seem to go together as far as remaining in that childlike state to this day. Alexithymia is a difficulty in understanding our own emotions and being able to articulate about them. I believe that goes hand in hand with the slow processing. I don't know about you, but I'm an extremely slow processor. It can take me a long time to answer a question. If it's something that requires a lot of thought, especially about how I feel about something very important or something that I have a lot of emotion, I don't even know. And it could take a long time for me to sort that out. And it's not like I go sit down somewhere and think and think and think about it and then have an answer. It's like my brain works on it in the background while I go about my life. It could be days before I know what I want to say. And the slow processing, that's a rough one. It can be really debilitating, especially having a, corporate type job where, you have to come up with answers just like that. And a lot of times I don't have an answer just like that. And that's where I found that I'm much, much better at written communication than I am in person because I have time to formulate my thoughts. I have time to respond in such a manner that's accurate. I've often had conversations with people where they have said something, and you know how conversations go. It's this back and forth. And I realize that my fourth doesn't come for a day or two later when I realize, what I would have said if my thoughts had formulated right then and there. And that could be very frustrating. It makes it hard to interact with people. You can see people getting frustrated when I don't know, what to say. And it's not that I'm trying to be difficult. I just honestly don't have my response yet. And it just takes me some time. And if there's something that I have a lot of emotion behind, that just, exaggerates it all the more. I find that the whole thing with routines and transitions are definitely related. With routines, I know that a lot of us are the same way in this regard. This is so very common, eating the same foods all the time. I will tend to do this thing where, I get comfortable with eating the same thing day after day after day after day, and then I have to change it up. I get worn out on it or sick of it, and then I will switch to something else and eat that day after day after day after day. I hope that you all are taking a multi and other necessary supplements like I am in this regard, if that's how you are. I think it's important that we get proper nutrition, driving the same way to go places and wearing the same types of clothes and repetitive watching of movies and reading the same books. And that familiarity is so incredibly important when we are living in this very, very unpredictable world that is so very difficult for us because we're so very different. That's why I can become so incredibly distressed when my routines are changed on me. I have found that that has been one of my hugest challenges with my job. I started to realize that it seemed like I was getting way too upset over certain things. This is before I realized I was autistic, and then this is one of my challenges. And when something is changed on me that's outside of my control as far as a routine goes, it makes me really, really, really upset. And I couldn't understand why. Why am I so upset about this? It seemed unwarranted. I thought maybe I was flaking out or hormonal or whatever. And suddenly it all made sense when I learned about this. And I know now that that's not necessarily something that's going to change. So, what needs to change is the types of situations and employment that I put myself in. I believe transitions go right along with routine. So, transitions are an interesting thing. I think it involves many different factors. One is, when we begin a task and we get in that flow and we're doing our thing and we're rolling along, it's really, really, really hard to stop and switch to something else. The hyper focus really just, takes over. And if we get interrupted when we're in the middle of doing something, for me, it's like I glitch. Like I can be so engrossed in something and, someone will interrupt me and ask me a question and I'm just like frozen. It can be a simple question like, where's the mustard? And I'm like, what's mustard? Like when I drive somewhere, I always sit in my car for a second and, kind of collect myself before I get out and go do my thing. And that's a very, very common thing for me. I very rarely will get in a car, show up to somewhere, and just jump right out of the car. I must be in a super quick rampage. I got to get this done immediately mode because that's not how I typically roll. Oh my gosh, you guys. Social challenges. I think we could make an entire video about this. I will go over some of the most very important points. But first of all, when I am in a room with a lot of other people and there's all these different interactions going on, I will just give an example of the choir room at my church. I was on the worship team for quite a while. We have this big room, and there's usually snacks and drinks, and people kind of mill about and all hang out and chat each other up. And everyone's kind of got their people that they hang with and this and that. And I'm one of the people that remains out on the fringes of the group. I will be over there while everyone's kind of doing their thing. I'm like kind of stepped back. And that's part of the whole keeping my body separate. And I have found that as far as like when I'm sitting and talking to people, if I'm not familiar with them, it makes it hard for me to know what to do with my body. Like not knowing how to sit or where to put my hands or what should I be doing with my feet, and should I just sit how I'm comfortable. And I realize that I tend to mirror who I'm sitting with, and I was aware all along that I was doing it but never actually realized that it's autism. It can be very overwhelming to be in a room with a bunch of people or interacting with a group of people that you're unfamiliar with and having the energy and the vibe of others that just completely we do not jive with. That can be really hard. whole communication thing, as far as knowing when to respond and what to say and how to say it. That is so very challenging. I'm worried about what to do with my body, the whole eye contact thing. Where do I put my hands? How close do I need to get to this person? I know I have this thing where I get too close to people. I see them move back and I don't even realize I'm doing it. And when I start talking about something I am excited about, like my voice will get really loud and then I start oversharing and I realize I've gone on and on and on and I've gotten louder and louder and louder. And then when I stop talking, I'm like, wow, I was really loud just now. I realize that I'm probably completely overwhelming to some people and they don't know what to do with me. That's why I'm so very glad I found out that I'm autistic. It's like I can have this disclaimer now, and it's okay. It makes it all okay. I mean, it's not, but it is to a degree because I have a name for it and a reason, and it makes it make sense of all this. Being in these situations where we already feel like an outsider, we already feel awkward, and we have all these things going on it it's just rough. It's no wonder we need so much time after things like this to just step back and breathe and regulate. Okay, you guys, talk to me about your special interests. What are they? So, I am an artist. I love, love, love to create things. It is just where I find so much joy. And my happy place, I can just sit and go for hours and hours and hours and hours and just not even be aware of anything. And, I could be sitting there for 4 hours creating something, listening to one of my favorite movies that, I've heard 10,000 times and just do my thing. And I haven't even realized how much time has gone by. And I'm sad when I have to stop. And then when I go to get up and I can barely bend my legs because I've been sitting so long, I think that that's where we can get into oversharing as well because we start talking about these things that we're just so very, very, very into. We have this, tunnel vision of focus on these things. I would think that if we could make our career out of one of our special interests, that would just be unbelievably amazing. But I don't know about you. I think that some of our special interests may evolve over time. I don't know. I've always loved to do art ever since I was a young child. I can just whittle away the hours doing anything artsy craftsy. And music. Music has always been a thing for me. I have to have music playing. And depending on my mood and what I'm into, it's usually something kind of ambient and soothing as far as bringing me down a few notches, which is always a good thing. Nature is so good for me to regulate and just getting out and taking a walk and looking at the sky and smelling the trees and hearing the birds talk about amazing, right? I think it's really cool to hear about other people's special interests. It's amazing how people can become like super experts at certain things and just know every single thing about something. It's really cool. I went to that anime convention a while back, and I'm sure that there was a lot of that rolling around. I love anime. I am such a huge Studio Ghibli fan. Do you guys love like Totoro and Howl's Moving Castle and things like that? Oh my gosh, I love those movies. Getting into special interests is something that will, always light us up. I know I do. I think that we often look to our special interests for regulation and for, a solace and an escape from this very unpredictable and clamoring world. Oh my gosh, you guys, sensory issues. Where do I start? When we are born, we have all these extra synapses in our brain that we need as newborns. But over time, in the neurotypical brain, these synapses disconnect and they are left with a neurotypical brain. In our case, the synapses all remain connected. We experience a sensory assault that other people do not experience. When we go into a crowded restaurant, we receive everything at once when we walk in the door. Neurotypical people have a lot of that filtered out. They don't notice it, and therefore they don't have to try to filter it all out themselves consciously. They're not even aware of these things. When you have everything coming at you all at once, like this wall, this wave, just wham! It's a lot. So I have found, we'll just take the crowded restaurant, for example. When I go in, there are times we tend to go to the same places for that, thank goodness. If it's going to be somewhere new, I've learned that I need to look up the menu in advance. I need to learn all about this place so that when I walk in that door, I have reduced as much uncertainty as possible so that I can better deal with the sensory assault. So, if this is something that you guys struggle with, highly recommend doing that. Map the place out, figure it out, find out where the bathroom is, find out if you have to wait to be seated or if you can seat yourself, find out if you pay at the counter or if they take your check card at the table. Um, Read the menu and figure out what you want to order in advance. So if I go into a restaurant that is crowded and I am low on spoons, even one that I've been into several times, and I haven't figured out what I want in advance, and I want to try something new, and I'm looking at the menu, the words don't even make it into my brain. Like I see them on the page, but they don't make it from my eyes to my brain. I can see them, and that's it. I can't comprehend them. And it makes it impossible for me to know what I'm supposed to be doing. And, the waitress will come around and she's there. And I'm like, I don't know, whatever I had last time. I mean, I have found that trying to prepare in advance for all these different things is very, very, very helpful because we have enough to deal with walking into a public place. And knowing in advance just makes it so much easier to deal with everything else that comes at us that's going to come at us no matter what. What we can take care of. That's really, really helpful. It sure has been for me. Okay, you guys, proprioception. I never heard that word in my life until recently. So I've got issues. So what are yours? I ram my shoulders into doorways as I walk through them. When I swing my arms when I'm walking around, I slam my forearms into doorknobs and things. I drop things constantly. And then this is so ridiculous. Like I will drop something, so then I bend down to pick it up, but I'm looking at the thing that I dropped and not where my head's going. So I will hit my head like on the countertop, bending over to pick up my fork. It's an absolute like sitcom living with me sometimes, I'm sure, because whatever. So, Colalia, do you have this? I had no idea this was a thing for me until it came to my attention by reading about all this stuff. I'm like, oh, I do that. So when I'm having conversation with someone and there's a key phrase in the sentence that they said, I will repeat it. I've done that for a long time. I don't know how long, but it's not something I think about doing. I just do it. So there's that. Okay, guys. So how about your memory and pattern recognition and things like that? I wonder if I am not very unique at all in this realm, in the autistic world. It is so easy to notice when something is out of place, when something doesn't belong. These silly little things that you see in the Facebook feed of, spot the thing out of place. Only the smartest people in the world can do this in 5 minutes. And I'm just like, it's so ridiculous. And being able to just eyeball things, when I'm hanging pictures on a wall, just knowing where the center is and being able to cut a piece of paper straight down the middle without, measuring it out. I don't know. There's something just about eyeing these things. You would think that I could take that kind of stuff into account when I'm bending over to pick up my fork and not slamming my head on the counter. I mean, by the way, I even cracked my tooth sniffing a candle once. True story. So, memory. Do you guys like remember all these crazy random facts? I can remember random numbers like my library card 3 libraries ago. I'm lacking a recycling bin in my brain or something. I don't know. It's like I've got this never ending file cabinet system in my head. It's really interesting to me how my brain just hangs on to this stuff. I remember faces like crazy. I don't remember their name, but boy, do I remember faces. Do you guys have that too? Oh gosh, perfectionism. Man, it's like debilitating for me. Okay. I can't just finish something unless it's perfect and complete. And part of that I think is where my OCD comes in. I found out that I do have OCD and I will cover that in a video. It's very, very interesting. It's not what I thought it was. You guys, I'm really, really trying to work on that because I can't. I'm really curious to know how much time in my life I've wasted to make sure something is absolutely perfect before I call it done. Pomorphism. Is this a real word? I do this. Do you guys feel like your house is sad when you're not there? Feel like your stuffies can hear you talk? That they may feel neglected if you don't take them with? I get sad when I see abandoned houses, and I feel like that they just want someone to love them. When I've been away from my house on a trip and I get back, I feel like it's happy to see me. And I feel like my plants are aware of me. And I talk to my cat like he's a person and all these different things. And I never really thought anything of it, but it actually has a name. Do you guys do any of this stuff? All these things that I've covered. That's a lot. We as autistics deal, most of us, with a number of these things. We are on a spectrum and we all are our own recipe, but we all have a lot to deal with. I think that one thing we probably all have in common would be anxiety. Anxiety being a natural result of living as a neurodivergent in a neurotypical world. We have challenges that most of the people around us don't have. Extra sensory input alone is enough. The trouble with the social challenges, routine changes, trying to transition. Let's not even talk about masking and how that can drain us. Anxiety is real, and I have had it as far back as I can remember, and now I know why. I always thought that that was something I just need to get a handle on. I wish that I would have known about this a long time ago because I could have taken measures to deal with the anxiety. I went to my doctor after I received my diagnosis and asked about ADHD meds because I had seen so many videos of people talking about how helpful it's been. So we had a discussion, and I ended up going on something that actually is used to also deal with anxiety. My gosh, you guys, it has been such a life changer for me. I still have anxiety, but it is not like before I had a forest fire of anxiety, and now I have like a forest floor of burning embers. Like, that's the difference. It's been huge. And I mean, I'm talking like breaking out in high-V rashes constantly from anxiety. My cortisol levels through the roof, okay? Not to mention insomnia and stomach troubles and headaches and everything else that goes along with bad anxiety. It's been a rough road as far as anxiety goes, remember when I was a kid having such bad anxiety, nightmares constantly, terrible bad dreams. I mean, I remember some of them to this day, dreams I had when I was 5 years old. When my parents told me about Santa Claus, I completely freaked out. I was sick. I was literally sick about this old man coming into my house, and I didn't want him in my house. Who's this guy? I don't care what he's bringing me. Don't they say don't take things from strangers? Like, don't let him come in here. They ended up having to tell me that it was just all made up, which I was glad for. So naturally, with all of these things that we deal with, stimming is an amazing thing that we can fall back on. So, stimming is a term regarding self stimulating behavior that helps regulate us. And I've read a lot about how it works in our brains and why we do it. And it's really interesting. I read a really great description, and they said that we have all this energy built inside of us because of everything we're going through, okay? And stimming is a way of getting it out. And I thought that was such a great description because that's how I feel about stimming. And I have found that when I am in a particularly stressful situation, I will be stimming. And, in school, when I was younger, you're talking about hair twirling and, chewing on a pencil or tapping your foot. It's really interesting because I see fidget toys everywhere now and they're awesome. I have gotten all different kinds and I have found that I do have some favorites. And I mean, obviously, while I'm making these videos, so I have these noodles that look like this. They're stretchy and nice. This is what I do to them, you guys. I found that this is what I do. I tie them in knots and my daughter's like, "What did you do to that thing?" Like, made another video. So this one is one of my favorites. I know that a lot of fidgets are quiet, which is a good thing because you wouldn't want to hear this while I'm recording. But this is something that I got online. I really love. It's these two magnetic metal plates. One side, you can see this, looks like this, and then the other side looks like this, kind of like a domino. So both sides are magnetic, and you can just kind of slide them and click them back and forth, and they make all these really satisfying sounds. I don't know. I love them. I used it so much when I first got it that I kind of gave my fingertips little calluses, and I had to put it away for a little while and take refuge in my miniature squishmallow. So, yeah, stimming's great. And if you need to hide your stimming, there's all different kinds of ways to actually still make it happen where people aren't going to notice. One thing that I got was this spinner ring. It's not showing up very well. There's like three rings on here, and you can just spin it and kind of move them back and forth. That's really nice for when you're in a social situation where stimming is not a really good idea, but you can still make it happen and it's necessary. So go for it. When I received my autism diagnosis, I also received other diagnoses. I knew that I had complex PTSD from my past, from things from childhood, all throughout my life, my 11-year abusive relationship, and things that happened to be on. I've been through a lot, and life as an autistic is traumatizing enough, let alone situations that a neurotypical would find traumatizing. I have heard that we are more prone to trauma because of how our brains are wired. So I scored way off the charts on my PTSD test. I knew I would. This is something that I had been made aware of a couple years before this whole autism quest and diagnosis came about. And I also got diagnosed with ADHD and OCD. So I didn't know about these other two things. I thought OCD was just being like really clean and picky about, having your house in order. And it was really, really interesting for me to learn about that. And ADHD, combined type, was really, really surprising to me. I had no idea about that. And I'm only just now beginning to learn about it. So a lot of these traits that I have mentioned I have really tried to make sure that they are specific to autism. I know that there's a lot of overlap with ADHD, and the OCD in and of itself is a whole nother video, as well as PTSD. But I'm sure that those other things can kind of color my autism as far as, the whole color spectrum. It's really interesting to think about, there's a lot of people that are autistic that have co-occurring diagnoses. And it's fascinating when you start exploring how they can overlap or, kind of butt heads or balance each other out. There's so much to learn, and I'm so grateful for all the resources online. There's there's so many places that we can go to learn so that we can, thrive in this world and in turn help others. Drop me some comments. I'd love to hear about your experience with all this, and I love getting to know all of you. Anyway, thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.